Martyrs and Missionaries is a production of Revive Studios. In this episode, we are covering the top 5 favorite episodes of 2021 for not only Martyrs and Missionaries, but also for the sister podcast, Revive Thoughts.
Troy, how are you doing today? Did you have a good Christmas?
We had a great Christmas. We enjoyed ourselves for the most part. It was very different. Went to a beach, and it was sunny, and one of Elise's Christmas gifts was to ride a jet ski. And we also we did not say this, but we have cool. Elise in the studio with us right now doing this episode of Revive Thoughts as well. And this episode will be on Martyrs and Missionaries, her podcast, and we will be covering the top 5. For those of you who don't know, if you've never been a part of this, we go through the top episodes of 2021, the ones that we think are your best hits.
Not necessarily the most listened to, but kind of like our favorites. What are our favorite episodes of the past year?
And for Elise, we decided we wanted to include Martyrs and Missionaries in that top 5 list as well. And so if you're listening to either one of our shows and you're wondering, where do I begin? Where's a good place to start? This can maybe be a list of episodes to help you get started. But Joel, I'm throwing it back to you. How was your Christmas?
My Christmas was great. Both of my wife's and I parents are in the area, and so we get 2 Christmases where we go to one house on one day and then in-laws on the other. And so we have a little 1.5-year-old son, little boy now, and so this was his first Christmas that he could actually experience the excitement of being given gifts, and so he had a blast, and it was a pretty good Christmas overall. Pretty nice. And yeah, listener, if you are listening to I'm Joel, I'm on Revive Thoughts, so I'm assuming you already know everything about Revive Thoughts, but you may not. You might be listening to this on the Martyred Missionary feed. Either or, if you guys don't know, there is another show called Martyrs and Missionary. If you're not listening to it, you should definitely subscribe. Elise hosts that, and she does a great job. Unlike Troy and I, she actually has a beautiful radio voice that sounds really good. And if you're on the Martyred Missionary feed, Troy and I do a show called Revive Thoughts, where we talk about old sermons, and then we listen to a recreation of that sermon read by volunteers from the community. So it's a pretty neat feed. And we also have another show called Revive Devos, which is hosted by our friend Nathaniel, who's not on this episode, but every day he reads a little short 2-minute devotional from people from church history. Just a little encouragement to get your day going, give you something to think about for that day. So we got Revive Thoughts, we got Martyrs and Missionaries, and we have Revive Devos, all shows you can search for in your feed. And are brought to you by the Revive Studios.
Yeah, and Revive Devos, we definitely want to encourage you to subscribe to that one. We have people who have been following our shows, who like Martyrs and Missionaries, who follow Revive Thoughts, who still don't know about Revive Devos, which is a daily devotional, and it's brought to you by teachers from the past that are wonderful. So it fills a need. I think people often look for a little devotional they can enjoy, but you never know what you're going to get listening to stuff today or looking at books today. This is trustworthy content from people you can kind of help rely on that we think will encourage you in your walk with God. But honestly, this episode too is not just going through the top episodes for each podcast. It's also an episode where we can kind of highlight how this year has gone for us. And honestly, this has been a really, really good year for Revive Studios. I did not realize just how good this year was going for us until I was kind of looking at the downloads across the entire studio from Martyrs and Missionaries, Devos, and Revive Thoughts together. And that was when I was really blown away. We've been doing just really an amazing year. God has really blessed us. We've gone up, I want to say, well over 200,000 downloads across the studio, which if you're not much of a podcaster, you don't know, that's okay. But for us, this was double what we did in 2020, and 2020 was a really good year for us as well. So this feels like really significant growth. And we've also added successfully, I would say, Elise's show, Martyrs and Missionaries, which has just been, I think, filling a need, and a lot of people have been really enjoying that. And Elise, we have been very happy that you've been helping us with that.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and it actually seems both longer and shorter than just being on for a year. So it's been really exciting.
There you go. So we have a lot of shows, and we here at the Revive Studios, we're also working on more. So I'm very excited for 2022 and some of the things that we have been cooking up that took a little while. If this is, if we're using the metaphor, we laid the chicken eggs a while ago waiting for them to hatch. That's like the weirdest metaphor ever. Anyway, but there's some really fun stuff, some really cool stuff that's coming in the year 2022. I'm finally getting really into another Revive Thought deep dive. Revive Devos is back in full blast for those who got kind of put on pause for a while when Elise and I were moving to Cambodia. So a lot of things are going very well. And we have a merch store, which we promised ages ago, and now is officially up. I've been collecting photos from people who have been like in merch gear and stuff, and we're going to be posting that up soon. But they look really good, and I wear our Revive Thoughts shirts a lot just because it's a cozy, soft shirt. Not because I'm that guy, but also it is a cozy, soft shirt, so I put it on a lot. So if you have not ordered one, have not gotten one, you should definitely do so. But this has been a great year. We've had a lot of fun, and yeah, you guys you who are listening right now, you have sent us so much feedback, so many emails and comments and messages. It's very encouraging. I feel like not a week goes by where we don't at least hear from somebody telling us, wow, that was really what I needed to hear. And sometimes it's many more than just one person. And so it's been really encouraging to just see how many people are being affected by different stories from the past and different sermons from the past. But without any further ado, I vote we go ahead and get started and get cracking. And we'll go one at a time. Each of us give our top 5. Now, Joel and I have not crossed over our lists, and I feel like every year we have one episode where we both agree it is our favorite, or it is the one that we think needs to be on this top 5 list. But other than that, for the most part, Joel and I do not cross over usually at all.
We might have some crossovers here because we have not compared lists previously.
We have not at all. So it says top 10, but it could end up being, it could literally be top 7 or something if we cross over too many times. But picking a favorite Revive Thought episode for me is excruciatingly hard because there are so many good ones, so many episodes I love that it's like it is genuinely nearly impossible for me to do so. Go ahead, Joel. Go ahead and hit us with your 5th. Your number 5 for the top 5 list. What do you think it is?
And this is a tough year to do this because I feel like we had a really good year. Like just from my point of view, as far as like interesting sermons and like really really fascinating sermons. I feel like there was a good. It's been a longer year. I was looking back through our list and I'm like, wow, we aired this one this year and this one this year. They all came in pretty good, but I'd probably go. I'm going to put Livingston on there. The sermon called "Who Will Carry on the Work" by David Livingston. It published on June 17th of 2021. I like it. It's the second one we've done on Livingston, and I really enjoy his. He's very blunt. He's very like straight, down to earth. I'm gonna get the information out there. You guys hear it like it is. And it's also fascinating because there's not a lot by him out there that, I think we call him like a spiritual speech because, or kind of like pep talks. They're not even like, it's not a formal sermon that was preached at a church. And so definitely, I think one worth checking out. What do you think, Troy?
Definitely in there. I didn't put it on my top 5. That was partially because I wondered if you were going to put it on your top 5, so I didn't want to overly cross over. It's an extremely good episode, and I love David Livingston. We technically have done both of his official speeches, which were kind of given back to back. And last year I put David Livingston as my number 1, so that was also another reason I didn't want to put him in my top 5, just because I already used him last year. But I really love David Livingston. Elise was actually the one who we crossed over. That was an episode we crossed over with Martyrs and Missionaries, so she helped give the backstory on him too. He's truly an incredible human being. So if you've not listened to that episode and listened to his backstory, make sure you do. But for me, my episode is a little bit different. I want to make sure I'm getting this. Okay, so number 5, and I don't know if this was. I did really enjoy the sermon, so I don't want to downcast the sermon, but I also super loved his story itself. Savonarola and the Bonfire of Vanities. I loved his story. of trying to stand up to the Catholic Church and all the things that he got involved in. And then his sermon itself, I've used, there's a certain section of his sermon where he talks about how the world recognizes their own and Christ stands out, and if the world isn't having a problem with you, it's because it recognizes you as one of your own. I have used that example so many times, I feel like, in the last year, where I'm like, well, that's probably because the world recognizes that one as their own, or something like that. So it definitely, that part stood with me, and it stood with me the entire year. So I think that one's a number 5 for me.
Yeah, that was a good one. Savonarola is a weird dude, and I love it.
All right, is it my turn?
Yes. Oh, yes. Elise, you're up.
Oh, here I go. Okay, so I didn't originally put mine in any kind of like highest to lowest, or I guess lowest to highest.
In no
but
particular order.
Yeah, but I will now because I feel like there's some pressure. But I also feel kind of weird because I'm like, they're missionary stories, and I'm like, you're not exciting as so-and-so. Okay, so the first one for me for number 5 is Annie Taylor. And she was a missionary to Tibet, kind of, sort of. In the early 1800s, and her story is just really, really cool. Like, when you read her book, she's much more of I don't even know if it's like a botanist. She's kind of into like the weird details of her story, so you kind of weed through like the different kinds of plants in order to get to like, I don't know, being chased by wolves or whatnot. But she has a really cool story, and it kind of one of those stories where she's a really bristly human being, and not a lot of people could get along with her. But that same tenacity is what kind of helped her to even think about or even attempt to go to Tibet, which, I mean, it was closed off back then, much like it is today. So yeah, it's really cool.
Wonderful. You said Annie Taylor, right?
Annie Taylor. Yep. It's called Lhasa for the Lord.
No relation to Hudson Taylor, right?
No, actually, surprisingly, they're both from Britain.
There's Taylors out in the world.
Yeah. No, that's a great episode. I remember when I listened to all of Elise's episodes before she puts them out. And I actually listened to almost all of Revive Thoughts, except when we don't have time. So I listened to all of them. And Annie Taylor getting nearly assassinated like multiple times. It was crazy. That is an intense story. All of Elise's stories, to be fair, are crazy. But I just remember going, like, I would have definitely given up a little bit earlier than her. All right, Joel, swinging it back to you. Number 4 in your list. What do you got?
Yeah, speaking of Taylor, I'm putting Hudson Taylor on there, a sermon titled Abiding in Christ, which aired July 1st. You gotta love Taylor, man. That faith missions, he's so hardcore, and I feel like he always knows, like, just the right thing to say to get you hyped up about taking your faith seriously and getting off the couch, and he's pretty encouraging guy all around.
Yeah, I love Hudson Taylor. He's definitely a hero of the faith for me. And his sermons, I'm really sad because, and I don't want to say we'll never have Hudson Taylor on again, but as far as we've had 3 different sermons of his on Revived Thoughts. We've had Compassion on the Multitude, we had the Abiding in Christ, and we had his very first one with us. Man, I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, Source of Power. All 3 of them are wonderful. The gentleman who does the Hudson Taylors for us, Dr. Dodds, he was a professor of ours at Calvary. He's wonderful. He does a great job with them. But at the same time, I have so scoured Hudson Taylor's writings that it will be difficult to find another episode of his for us to do. I'm hoping to. Pray if you're out there listening, pray we find another. But yeah, it's going to be tough because, Hudson Taylor spent most of his time on the front lines doing missions work. People weren't writing down his things. So the next time you listen to or hear about Hudson Taylor, it might have to be on Elise's show because we might not be able to do him again on Revive Thoughts just because of how few of his writings and speeches exist.
Crazier things have happened, though. We have uncovered some pretty cool sermons that we are almost certain that no one else has heard for hundreds of years.
For sure. No, that is one of the fun things about Revive Thoughts. If you're listening to our show, maybe you're kind of a casual listener and you think all of these speeches and things are well known. Absolutely not. Some of these things we truly have unearthed and brought to light. I can actually even point, there are episodes where I don't think anyone can ever even find that sermon again because the library took the book down or something like that. So we have truly a very special list of sermons. God sometimes, I think, just brings them to us in really unique ways. Those David Livingston ones, I mean, there are just so many where these things are hard and difficult to get to, and we pull them back out. It's a lot of fun to do it. It can be a real pain because I have to edit a lot of these things, but it's definitely worth doing. And yeah, a lot of times when you hear something on our show, it is truly being brought back to life from an old manuscript or a book somewhere that no one has touched in eons. So it is really something cool to be a part of. All right, number 4 for me moving forward. Oh, can you hear that weird sound that we keep hearing?
Not on my end. What is it?
I have no idea. It's like someone moving furniture. You hear that?
Yeah, there's nobody upstairs.
Like in your
I've
building?
never heard this, but yeah, there is no upstairs to our house, but it sounds like somebody moving a chair like over the floor above us. So I don't know if a snake is up there or what, but anyway.
Well,
all right, I'll jump
terrifying.
back in. I got one. It is. Especially because our students told us the story of like one time the roof had a lot of rain and like a hole formed, the roof got weak and a snake fell through in the middle of class and fell like on the ground in front of all the students.
You are making me wig out, man. Like that is literally I've had nightmares like that.
Yeah. Well, the other night our nightmare came true where it was like 2 a.m. and as we were getting in bed, we turned the lights off and there was a giant spider in the corner of a room. It was huge and we had to kill it. And I had to throw a shoe at it to knock it. It was a whole fight. Oh my gosh, it was awful. And it was
There's something personal too because it was like above my side of the bed. And
when I killed it, it fell on her side of the bed, and I had to scoop it out. It was the worst. It was
I changed
the
the sheets and everything. It was just.
Right. Here we go.
I say we leave it on.
Yeah. All right. Number 4, Cotton Mather. What can I do to be saved? That one was great. I love his story. I love his passion. I love his you've got to know Jesus or you're going to go to hell. Those are the two places. It's heaven or hell. And so many of you are not asking the most important question of your life, which is what can I do to be saved? His passion, his zeal, and his story. I think Cotton Mather does not get enough credit for being
He's a more
someone
controversial
who was
one,
genuinely trying.
in that Puritan area.
And we did an episode on our deep dives where we talked about the Salem witch trials and Cotton Mather. So we did not gloss over who he was, but I still loved his passion. I loved his sermon. You could really see that he cared about the people he was speaking to a lot. So definitely a good episode for people to check out if they haven't. Number 4 for me.
All right, number 4 for me is called Martyred Beside the Rhone. And that is, if you're thinking I said that wrong and it's the Rhine, it's not. I almost messed that up myself. But apparently there's another river in France. Anyway, these are martyrs in Rome during the late 200s, and this was actually, it comes from a letter that was written to this historian guy named, I think Eusebius, I think is how his name is pronounced. And so they were telling him, like, hey, this is what happened. The emperor came along, and, all these different Christians were martyred in horrific ways at the Colosseum. And then it talks about basically, like, walks through how their faith was tested, the various ways that they died, and kind of the effect on the church as a whole. So it's a really, I would say it's kind of it's a sadder episode because it's martyrs, but it's actually really cool too, because you can see the effect that like people who recant, kind of the effect that has not only on them, but on the people, around them. And then, do they go back and do they try again kind of thing? But you'll have to watch to find out. You have to listen to find out. So.
I'm going to do something to kind of take a little break here. We've gone through some episodes, but we asked you to write in and tell us some of your favorites. And Phil on Twitter, and we just kind of hand-selected some here. We didn't go through all. We did read through all of them, but we're not going to read all of them to you. But Phil on Twitter, he said, okay, Revive Thoughts, I believe my favorite episodes from this last year are as follows. And they said all and any of the revived conversations, particularly last week's, which was very nice. I think the one that we had done at that time last week's was Troy and Joel Talk St. Nicholas, where we talked about St. Nicholas. That was a lot of fun.
St. Nick.
But we appreciate that. Honestly, the revived conversations were really well received. I didn't know how people were going to feel about them. They were an idea I'd had for a long time, but I just didn't know, does anybody actually want to hear our opinions and our thoughts on this stuff? Or are you here for only the sermons? And we found out that you do. You enjoy hearing our thoughts on church history too, which was really nice. And then he said his other two favorites were, and the reason I wanted to read this is I'm curious if this will go into your list at all, Joel, but he said his other favorite was John Newton from February and D.L. Moody from July.
Okay. Newton, what I had not considered. I love me some Newton. Moody is always a contender for my list, just because I like Moody. I wasn't actually going to put him on this list, but I could give him an honorary position. I do like our Moody, though, in general. But no, neither one of those officially on the list.
Okay, I thought the Moody might have been on your list. That was why I saved it for a little later in there. I was like, I feel like Usually Moody makes it to every year up until now. You've had Moody on there, so I was like,
and it would have if we didn't have so many other good ones too. Like it's hard to narrow them down now.
Actually, and in the past we had done like a top 10, so it's really hard when you're doing just top 5. You're like, okay, wait, this is basically the top 10%. This is not the easiest thing to do on over here. Elise is smiling at me like, okay, you nerd. Anyway, so let's see then, Joel. What is your number 3?
Yeah, going down to 3. Oh, this is probably maybe a tie. I don't know. I really liked R.A. Torrey just because Torrey was new for me. He did a sermon that we aired on May 20th called "One of the Saddest Things a Christian Ever Said." But I also really liked our Machen we did this year, Gresham Machen, The Resurrection of Jesus Christ, aired June 10th. Both those are really good. Torrey, I knew the name on the radar, but this was my first time actually getting into who he was and what he was about. And for those of you who don't know, over on Revive Devos, we have a weekly devotion. Torrey's in rotation right now, so you can hear 2 minutes of Torrey every week if you'd like. But yeah, Torrey and Machen.
Why I was like you. I had never heard of R.A. Torrey, and after this sermon, I picked up a book of his and I read it.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I have a book on my desk right now from R.A. Torrey.
What book are you reading?
Okay, I have it here. So this is a little it's a little pocketable book, and it's called The Vest Pocket Companion for Christian Workers, and it's essentially just kind of like a triage, a theology, a triage thing that you're supposed to kind of like keep with you, like for like it's the type of thing like an old pastor would have with him that could address theological topics that come up, and he could flip through and read some commentary from Torrey on it. And it was actually a Christmas present, and I was like, awesome, I need some more Torrey in my life.
Oh, and you mentioned J. Gresham Machen as a tie there. I want to say that the sermon is fantastic, but the backstory on that one was so fun to do, learning about J. Gresham Machen in World War I. And I've had so many people write in and say, I did not realize what he went through in his personal life story. So his story from World War I is almost completely unknown, but it really does change your perspective on J. Gresham Machen. Though both of your episodes you mentioned were contenders for my top 5 list, and a part of me hurt to not put them on. But I was trying to stick to episodes that I thought maybe wouldn't necessarily be on your top 5 either. So for number 3 for me was actually Robert Murray McCheyne, Another Lily Gathered, which was the really sad story of the young boy who died, and Robert Murray McCheyne gave his funeral. It is a depressing sermon, a little bit sad, but it is also such a good sermon. The way he talks about his life, the way that young man lived for Jesus Christ, absolutely phenomenal. If you have not listened to that sermon, if you do not know Robert Murray McCheyne's backstory, both of those things are well worth it. You definitely got to go check them out.
Okay, so for these next 3, and they're really just kind of a roll of the dice. I'm not going to say that they're just really close. All right, so John G. Payton is my number 3, and he actually has 3 episodes. So the very first one is called So Far As It Shall Be for Your Good and His Glory. That's what it's called. And then there's number 2, which is called With Christ and Cannibals. And then number 3 is Rain from Below. And John G. Payton is one of those guys that he legitimately lived like 10 lives, and his autobiography goes on for years. And I mean, it literally goes on for years, but obviously, it's so long, and there's just so much that happens. And it's just really super, super incredible. I don't even know. I've never had the desire to go to a cannibal island. I don't know how many of those are left, but after seeing multiple people be cannibalized, he chose to go all the same, and it's just really, really, really cool. So I highly, highly recommend that one.
This next one is for number 2, but before we do that, I was going to read an email we got. So reading another listener submission here. We got an email from a speaker of ours, actually. He does speaking for us. He's got an episode that will be coming out soon. But he said his favorite episodes, number 1 was the Bonhoeffer one. He said he didn't listen to it when it came out, but he listened to it when we put it out around the Christmas time, and that is now his number 1 favorite episode. He really loved that one. His number 2 would be Hudson Taylor's Abiding in Christ, the one you had mentioned. Very good episode. And his number 3, I'm curious which one you think this is, because he said your number 3 would be our discussion, the one you and I had, Joel, on how godly men in the past got so much done. And he said, I'm still stinging from that confrontation on my laziness. And I'm really curious. And he said some other things. He's wonderful. We really appreciate him speaking for us. And all of our speakers, we haven't mentioned them yet, but one of the hardest parts about picking out the top 50 episodes is for a year is that we've had 50 different people come on and speak sermons for us, and we've had a few people do more than one, and those are actually the real champions that can do a couple different ones a year. But we are so blessed by people who come in and speak them, and who have jumped in. We've had a lot of new volunteers coming on. It's been hard for me to get them all onboarded, but it's been awesome getting all these sermons out to fresh voices, and people who've been doing it for a while are also amazing. But yeah, we're really grateful for them. But I was curious, Joel, do you know which episode is the episode where we went after people's laziness? Because we didn't have an episode title like "Lazy Men of the," like not
Right.
"Lazy Men of the Past" or something.
Yeah, and I'm curious. I mean, I definitely recall talking about that with you. Like, we've had that conversation on the show. Probably more than once.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Maybe it was in that one where we just talked about flawed men in the church.
That's the one I thought. So I thought it was
Yeah.
the flawed men of the past, but the creative one, I thought the creativity one, we also talked about all the different creative aspects they were doing. So I thought it's possible it could have been that one as well. But I do agree with you. That was the one I thought it was as well. It's the flawed men of the past, which just talking about how these men were flawed and but also how much they were able to do in their lifetime. So thank you, Chips. We appreciate that. And again, we appreciate you and all of the speakers that we've had this year speaking. You guys have been really good. Actually, really high quality sermons have come in this year. It's been very good. Joel, what's your number 2, your second best, your runner-up of the year?
So, I also really enjoyed the Revived Conversations, and so I'm gonna put. See, we say like we're gonna limit ourselves to 5, but then I just put a bunch of ties in there. It's my way of cheating the system, where I can put multiple ones in there.
Okay, I have a 3-way tie for number 2, so I'm cheating too.
Yeah. And so I really liked our conversation on persecution in the church. I thought that was really informative. I thought that was really interesting. One of the few times where I feel like on the air you can kind of hear me changing my mind slowly. By the end of it, I feel like we get a little bit more on the same page, and I thought that was a really fun journey to kind of go on. And I definitely think you guys should check it out if you can. Persecution, I'm trying to look it up, the exact title of it. Revive Conversations. Does persecution always grow the church? Is what that episode was titled. A fascinating discussion, and I also really dug our Saint Nick, even though I was sick as a dog. I actually wasn't really sick at that point, but I had no voice, and I sounded awful, and I didn't really talk as to try to not distract the viewer, because I know each time I open up my mouth, the listener's going, "Oh my goodness, why does Joel sound so awful?"
It's true.
But I
We even had comments on Facebook like, "Hope you get better."
Yeah. But really fascinating. I wish I wasn't sick so much, because I had more questions to ask that I didn't. But super interesting. I guess the holiday season is on our backside now. But if you ever want,
I imagine any good Revive Studios listener will come around every single year.
Be curious about who the man of Saint Nick actually was. Yeah.
All right, so my number 2 is also a tie. It seemed wrong to not mention either of these episodes, and this is definitely where I'm cheating too. So I know what my number 1 is, and I don't know how to get both these guys in here. So Dietrich Bonhoeffer's sermon on forgiveness, I really, really loved it. I understand why Chips put it as his number 1. It's a live sermon, which was really cool, and I loved it. It was a great sermon. And yeah, I could not mention that here this year. It was the first sermon we put out in 2021, but it was definitely wonderful. If you've never listened to it, listen to it. Some people have opinions on Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I understand, but listen to that sermon, and I promise you will go, wow, that's an incredible sermon. And then the other one, this one is both extremely good and extremely unique, and it's Sansom Occam's The Execution of Moses Paul. I loved the build-up, the backstory, the whole setting of this guy preaching this at someone's execution, and the sermon itself, just very raw, very passionate, very authentic. A wonderful episode. We are blessed to make both of those.
Yeah,
I definitely make sure you've listened to them.
Relatively recent, November 11th was Samus Occam. Definitely worth checking out and looking up on your feed here.
All right, unlike these two here, I did not cheat the system. My 5 are my 5. So my penultimate is Darlene Rose. The episode title is Never Forsaken. And this one, I love them all. But this one has a special place in my heart because it was the first missionary biography that I ever, listened to on tape. I listened to her give her kind of not an interview. What do they call those things? Speeches? What is the word I'm looking for here?
Like a testimony?
I don't know. She gave, that's the word I'm looking for. She gave a testimony, her life story. And it was really, really cool. I listened to it over and over and over again. So obviously that is really, really special. She was a missionary to Papua New Guinea right before the breakout of World War II. Became a POW in a Japanese internment camp. And she is just a really, really cool story. So that is my number 2, Darlene Rose.
All right. So jumping in here with some more. Again, we asked for comments, and here's a couple we're choosing from Facebook. This is going to be one for Revived Thoughts and one for Martyrs and Missionaries. Ben Mullet said his favorite episode was Bonhoeffer on forgiveness. So again, there's many people, you've heard multiple people mentioning that one. So if you're a listener and you're wondering, hey, what episode do I need to check out? Maybe you've heard it there, but we need to check it out over there. And then for Martyrs and Missionaries, we had Cindy Mock. She sent in the link for the Amy Carmichael episode, which is a fantastic episode.
It is actually quite good.
Yeah, so if you have not listened to that one, those are great. So we enjoyed reading your comments, hearing the kind of episodes you all enjoy, and sometimes you surprise us. I was not expecting to see the John Newton on someone's list, for example, and yet there it is. So the episodes that we sometimes think are our number ones are not always the ones that everyone else is going to think as well. So that's always kind of fun. And speaking of number one, Joel, what was your number one episode for 2021?
Speaking of all this Bonhoeffer out in the atmosphere, that's going to take the number 1 slot for me, and it's actually handy for the listener too, because we just reran that as our Christmas episode while Troy and I were out. So it's literally just the previous episode in this feed. If you haven't listened to it already, listen to it. It's a good one.
It really is, and it came up on several different lists. So if you are listening, you can tell that is a well loved one. There's just something about it, and his understanding of forgiveness, I think, is what we all kind of. You haven't listened to it, just go listen to it. There's no other way to describe it. I can't put into words what Bonhoeffer did. Now, my number one, I did cheat. I said I didn't tie, and I kind of did, and I kind of didn't. So I took, because my number one slot, and this is actually surprising to me, because he actually has never made my number one slot before. We've done multiple episodes on him, but Charles Spurgeon is my guy of the year.
I knew it was going to be Spurgeon.
But the sermon and the episode are actually not, they don't match. So we did 2 episodes on him this year. The lecture on Little Faith, and we also did the Good Samaritan. Oh, both of them are fantastic, and they're so good. But I love the backstory from the lecture on Little Faith, because at that point we'd done 6 episodes. I thought we'd covered everything there was to cover about Spurgeon. We'd covered depression, we'd covered his family, his ministry, everything. And yet that downgrade controversy that we went through on the lecture for Little Faith, oh my goodness, I learned so much. And we've had so many people write in or message and say, I needed to hear that. I appreciate hearing that so much. So if you haven't listened to that backstory, it was really good. And the sermon with it was also fantastic. But the sermon of the year for me was from him, and that was his sermon, The Good Samaritan, which I got to listen to live as a gentleman recorded it. He was over the Spurgeon Center at the Midwestern Seminary, and he was reading it to me, and I was listening to it. And it is such a good sermon, The Good Samaritan. So you combine those 2 episodes, and I think you have the best one of the Revived Thoughts catalog is Charles Spurgeon for the year.
All right, Elise,
so the Prince of Peaches finally wins. So
yeah,
Elise, let's hear it. Number 1 for Martyrs and Missionaries.
All right, so my number 1, and if you are a devout listener to the show, this is going to come as no shock at all. It would be Gladys Aylward is my number 1. And we have, once again, like John G. Payton, there are 3 episodes. And
so you do have more than 1 episode.
I hoped you would notice that, okay?
I heard you earlier trying to be I don't tie. But anyways, a 3-set series.
No, here's the thing. Mine are just so good. They have to come in 3 parts. So, okay.
Like Lord of the Rings, right?
Exactly. That's right. A perfect trilogy. All right, so the first one here is called One of God's Great Miracles. And actually, they're all called the same thing. So it's one of God's great miracles, part 1, 2, and 3. And I really enjoyed everything about her story. I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed just everything about it is phenomenal. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people have watched the movie with, I think, isn't it Irene Dunn, I believe. Anyway, and that's good. That's fine. I'm not gonna knock that. But the book is fantastic. And so I go through the book and kind of read it, read it along, and then I kind of summarize, what I've read. And it's just, her story is just so cool. As she arrives she's trying to get to China right during the first, I think it's called the, the first Sino-Japanese War in 1905. And that in and of itself is just an incredible story about a really, really terrible train trip that just keeps going south. And then, just kind of, she gets into China after that, and then there's, all the stuff that happens there with the foot binding and the war and just all sorts of crazy stuff. So Gladys Aylward is my number 1.
All right, so you heard it, and honestly, I listen to Martyrs Missionaries too. I mean, she puts the episodes together and then has me proof listen to them. So many good ones. I don't know how you pick a top 5. And you, for example, one that she didn't mention, Mary Slessor, just fantastic. So you may listen to our lists. If you are a listener, you love Revive Studios, or you've been listening to our episodes, you may not agree with our list. You can feel free to leave us some comments or tell us our messages. We obviously all love hearing messages from you all. It is extremely encouraging when we receive them from you, so we're very grateful. This has been a banner year. We are grateful to God because we know that we could not have had such an amazing year without Him blessing us. There's no way Elise and I could have moved to Cambodia and kept the studio going without God just being with us. So we're very grateful for how this year went. 2021 has been awesome, and we are really looking forward to 2022. And I am looking forward to doing this again next year and seeing. I'm surprised, Joel, we didn't cross over at all this time, which was kind of fun. And it's been fun having Elise on here to show us her top 5 too. And from reading the comments and seeing the different people's episodes, it's just been a great year. I feel really good, as you can tell. So yeah, this has been fun.
It's true. He's been talking nonstop for a week about this is so exciting. Look at how much we're growing. Look at how, all this stuff. So it's yes, that's all I hear. Anyway, I wanted to
Lucky
give
her. I mean,
every day. Okay. Anyway, one thing I wanted to talk about really quick before we sign off, and I kind of wanted to create a little bit of hype going into 2022 because we're kind of, closing things down. You're maybe feeling like, you're ready for 2022. You're kind of done with 2021. So the first episode back, and I think this will be maybe a 2-parter or so, is going to be about the Cambodian Genocide. I actually was in the school library here, and I found this book called With Christ in the Killing Fields. And it's about a Korean guy who was not a believer when he came to Cambodia. He came to actually train soldiers in martial arts, the national soldiers against the Khmer Rouge. And he became a believer, and then he starts an orphanage, and all these things happen. So I'm really excited about that, and I just wanted to plug that to get you excited for 2022. As always, thank you for listening to Martyrs and Missionaries. I'm Elise.
Calling all partners. Losing weight is better together with Nutrisystem's Partner Plan. In fact, people who diet together lose 20% more weight than dieting on their own. Get new premium meals with up to 30 grams of protein. They're big and filling and taste delicious. Plus, try our new restaurant faves that taste like your favorite restaurant, portioned with half the calories. Don't wait. You could win big cash during Nutrisystem's Better Together Partner Plan 100K giveaway. And maybe win the grand prize of $25,000. Just go to Nutrisystem.com/thin right now and get 50% off plus an extra $50 off your first month. You heard me right. Go to Nutrisystem.com/thin right now and get 50% off plus an extra $50 off. Don't wait. This partner plan offer will not last long. Just go to Nutrisystem.com/thin right now and get 50% off plus an extra $50 off. Go to Nutrisystem.com/thin. See website for details on our 2-month subscription offer. No purchase necessary. Open only to U.S. residents over 21. Void where prohibited. Runs December 25 through April 4th, 2022. For official rules, visit Nutrisystem.com. Sponsored by Nutrisystem, Inc.